Hi everybody, Natalie here with novel thoughts for my July wrap-up. So I read tons and tons of books this month. 7, I think. Anyway, they were super great. I read everything from horror to sci-fi to classic fiction to children's literature to fantasy to French contemporary. Let's start with Dracula. So Dracula was great. It's one of the first horror books I've read. What could have made it better is just not knowing that we were talking about vampires. So you would have been figuring it out along with the other characters. It's written in the epistolatory format. That basically means that people are either writing letters, diary entries, or memorandums throughout the course of the novel. So that creates an amazing sense of dramatic irony as you read this book, because you know what's going on because you're reading everybody's diary entries, but because it's in their diary, chances are they're probably not telling each other, which means that they aren't communicating enough to know what's going on. So time is just running out with this vampire on the loose. So distressing. Needless to say, great book. There's about 100 pages I could have done well without, just because this time period waxes a little prolific and I didn't necessarily need to know it all. Okay, so last point about Dracula is that the first 50 pages are amazing. If you don't necessarily want to read the whole book because you don't want to take the time, but you kind of want to know what Dracula is all about, I would say read the first 50 pages. There are definitely moments in which you're traveling with Jonathan Harker. He's writing in his diary. He has no idea what's going on, and it's just exhilarating. It's just super, super freaky and super cool. Needless to say, it's a great horror novel, so I definitely check it out. So next, I read The Grandfather Clock. This is a children's book. What makes this book so cool is that it's like Alice in Wonderland meets Greek mythology, which is a crazy combination. So this girl's name is Constance, and she gets drawn into her grandfather clock, shrunk down, and she's in the base, and she has to try to figure a way out by climbing up through the clock, meeting a bunch of obstacles, solving riddles. It also is super interesting because you have all of these beautiful illustrations that are kind of like pencil drawings, if you can see that one, but you also have all the riddles that are actually put into the book, all of the little drawings and the riddles that they have written on them. And so what's really fun about that is it's super interactive. If you want to try to figure out the riddles with Constance, you totally can. Just have fun with it. Have fun with the riddles, try to figure it out. It's a super fun children's book and I definitely recommend it. So I also read The Martian. I don't have this book right now. We're passing it amongst our friends because it's an amazing book. But what I would have to say for this novel is it's done incredibly well for itself. It was self-published by Andy Weir in I think in 2011 or so, and it just caught fire amongst the sci-fi community and eventually was picked up by a larger publishing house and was mass-bred. Everybody's heard about it, and within like a year it's being made into a film that's coming out in a few months. It's just hit an incredible little pocket of sci-fi glory because we just had Interstellar, we've had other movies like Edge of Tomorrow and Oblivion, and all of a sudden we have this nice little niche that The Martian is going to fit right into. So it definitely has its place, and I think that's why, besides the fact that it's just an amazing book, that everybody is just loving this book. So if you haven't read it, I would definitely recommend it, especially before the film comes out, so that you can enjoy both mediums. So, some of the reasons that this book is awesome. The character Mark Watney gets stranded on Mars. That's the basic premise of the novel. He has to try to figure out how to survive for like 4 years. He's a funky botanist, and he is also a mechanical engineer. He's kind of like the jack of all trades of the mission, and so if anyone's gonna get stuck on Mars, it better be Mark Watney. He is super funny and very, very snarky. You read most of the novels through his logs every day, and he does swear a lot, but that's a super interesting part of his character, because if someone's going to get stuck on Mars and be in total isolation, how are they going to survive psychologically? Well, probably by being like Mark Watney. This is a great book as far as realistic sci-fi goes, because even though we don't necessarily have anyone on Mars, they use science and mathematics that are very, very plausible based on our current understandings of science and mathematics. And they explain it in a super approachable way. And so you can follow along, you can figure out what he's doing, like how he makes water out of hydrogen and oxygen and burning off fuel, and it's just super cool, and how he extends his food supply by growing potatoes and creating his soil and fertilizer. And needless to say, you definitely start to geek out a little bit because he explains it in a way that you can understand, but also that you can so thoroughly enjoy. So definitely read The Martian. It is like my top recommendation right now. read it. So I also read 2 Terry Pratchett books. So the first one is Masquerade. I also don't have this one. When it comes to Terry Pratchett, I usually check them out of the library and then I slowly accumulate them over time. So Masquerade was a super fun book. It was number 18 in Terry Pratchett's Discworld series, but it's number 5 in the Witches mini storyline. It's just really fun. So you have Granny Weatherwax and Nanny Ogg, who are trying to find a third witch for their coven, and so they go to Ankh-Morpork and have a lot of crazy adventures. Nanny Ogg publishes a book, a cookbook, that ends up being like the most intense aphrodisiac book ever created, which is just hilarious. And you have Agnes Knit, who is a girl who has a lot of witch talent, and she has decided to go to the opera and Ankh-Morpork so that she can try to meet her glory and become who she wants to be. And it's just a hilarious, hilarious book. So most of the witches novels are parodies of other storylines, and this one is definitely a parody of Phantom of the Opera. But it's funny, not creepy. So if you like that story and want to see it in a slightly different light that is entirely more enjoyable, definitely read Masquerade. So the next Terry Pratchett book I read is Hogfather. So this is the 4th book in the Death mini-series, and it is the 20th book in Terry Pratchett's entire Discworld series. So Death makes an appearance in all of the novels, but he has a couple books where he's the main character, and the Hogfather is one of the last ones where he is the main character. In the book, the Hogfather essentially is assassinated, I guess, and Death has to try to take over his job to save Hogswatch, which is a parody of Christmas. But what's cool about this book is that it examines what it means to believe in things. I definitely recommend Hogswatch, besides the fact that Death is awesome and it's just a super funny novel. The next book I read is called The Elegance of the Hedgehog. It's a French contemporary book, and it's very, very moving. They can move you to tears over a page about the ritual of tea. It has a lot of deep concepts, and it's just a beautiful French novel. I would highly recommend it for anybody who wants a real intellectual journey and a very moving experience. This is an amazing book. Also, just check out my book review if you want to know more about it. And finally, I just finished reading Far from the Madden Crowd. I actually bought this book at Thomas Hardy's home when I went to Great Britain a couple of years ago, and first of all, it's super beautiful. I love this book. But second, it's just really great. It follows the story of Bathsheba. She's a young girl who, once poor, moves into an inheritance and starts running a farm. And her 3 suitors. There's Farmer Oak, who's amazing, Farmer Boldwood, who's a little bit weird but very endearing, and Sergeant Troy, who nobody likes because he's kind of a scumbag in dandy clothes. It's all about Bathsheba's choices in relation to these 3 men and what it means to be an empowered individual and a very motivated woman, and sometimes just the real life mistakes she makes and how she gets through it. I really like this book. Bathsheba is one of the first written modern female empowered characters. So if you want to see what that's like, and if you want to get to know these characters who are so richly written, I definitely recommend this book. It's gorgeous. Also, there was a movie that just came out with Carey Mulligan, and it is very beautiful. The cinematography in it and the way they manipulate light in the landscape, amazing. Okay guys, so that is my wrap up for July. Read them all. They're super great. If nothing else, there's something here for everybody. So I will see you guys later, and if you want to subscribe, there will be a button like right here, and you definitely should. Bye guys!